Well, here's a video on 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 through 11. Kind of fun that we're almost done. We have one more section left for us, and then you guys have finished the book with your group, which is really cool. Hopefully the boys have learned more about Scripture and the writings of God through Paul, and hopefully they've learned how to read Scripture a lot better. What I want to point out is this section, similar to 4:13 through 18, has been a source of contention. There's a lot of different interpretations here, but what I really want you to see is a couple key things. That it ends, therefore encourage one another and build one another up, just as you are doing. Very similar to how 4:13 through 18 ended. The point of this is exhortative. This is not necessarily just a teaching by Paul about end times, but this is an encouragement and intended to call the Thessalonian church into encouraging one another. And he calls them to encourage each other about, the day of the Lord, the parousia. He says, now concerning the times and the seasons, brothers, you have no need to have anything written to you. You're fully aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. He says it outright. Hey, the coming again of Jesus, the second coming, will come like a thief in the night. And some will be saying there's peace and security, then sudden destruction will come on them like labor pains upon a pregnant woman. What's interesting is it says in verse 4, but you are not in darkness, brothers, for the day to surprise you like a thief. Paul is talking about the coming of the Lord, but I don't know if he's necessarily giving us a day or things to look for that will describe what's happening. Although that's how some people teach it, Paul's pretty outright, hey, the day is going to surprise us. And he says in verse 4, but you're not going to be surprised because you know what is coming. And really what you'll see is more than this is a teaching about how the end times will occur. This is a call into Christian living. Just like in 4:13 through 18, Paul was calling them into Christian hope. He's calling them into a Christian lifestyle, especially if you read this in light of the previous part of chapter 4 that says the will of God is their sanctification via abstaining from sexual immorality and brotherly love. We see that part of the sanctification here is to live a Christian life even knowing that the end is coming. This isn't a scare you text. This is a very encourage one another and build one another up text. And so where a lot of the boys are going to want to ask questions like, what will the end be like? How do we know it's coming? I don't necessarily think this verse gives us those answers. What Paul is doing is encouraging his people that no matter what, they ought to continue in their Christian life. And he jumps through a lot of analogies. He goes from awake to asleep, labor pains like a pregnant woman, being children of darkness, children of light, and then all the way to drunkenness and sobriety, back to sleeping and being awake. So don't let the constant jumping between analogies confuse you, especially the sobriety part. We belong to the day. Let us be sober. I think, yes, Paul is against drunkenness. That is a rhetoric and a theme of the New Testament that Paul teaches on. But this is less of a call to abstain from drunkenness and more of a call to sobriety, and not just sobriety from alcohol or substances, although that's included, but a sobriety of life. And you see that explained here. Let us be sober. Why? By having put on the breastplate of faith and love, hope. And so what we see is it's a sobriety that leads us into clear mind, into clear life, thinking and acting like Jesus did. This is all, if I want to reiterate anything to you, this is all a section about living in a Christ-like way. He's almost, it sounds very similar to in chapter 1 when we talked about exakeo and how the Thessalonian believers had lived in such a way that the word of the Lord had rung forth from them. Man, this beginning of chapter 5 sounds a lot like that. Hey, I know that you've been ringing forth the word of the Lord at the beginning, and now as we're getting ready to close, continue to do so. The season and the time in which the Lord will return, hey, that'll surprise some people who aren't believers. But you guys won't be surprised because you're going to continue living in the way that you have, following Christ, and being sober-minded with the breastplate of faith, love, and the helmet of hope. And so what I would do on this one is I would encourage you guys to see that this is a text about how we live today. Schatzman said it in his sermon that what you believe about the future affects the way that you live today, and that's exactly it. Paul is saying, hey, you guys have a belief in the coming of Jesus. That ought to change the way that you live and interact with people today. If you believe he's coming back, live that way. And so that would be my charge for the guys, is to show them to live in a way that displays their belief in the coming of the Lord. Talk to you soon.